Hoda Abdelhamid is in Benghazi for us in eastern Libya. Hoda, just to go back to the International Criminal Court, how will the statement from the chief prosecutor go down there?
Well, I'd say they've been very well received. I just spoke to actually a member of the National Council, and he said what it was about time the International Criminals Court looked into what was happening in Libya. He actually said, well, all our files are ready, everything is documented. We want the investigation not only to go into what happened since the uprising started on February 15th, but actually to look at all the 42 years of Gaddafi being the ruler of Libya. So certainly a move that has been very much welcomed. I have to say that wherever you go around here, the east, you will see graffitis on walls, you'll see posters, you'll see very graphic pictures, all denouncing really the brutality of the regime throughout the 42 years.
And I suppose there was also an attempt to warn off some of the people who might be thinking of giving orders, the people who haven't yet been identified as part of the inner circle, but people who might in future give orders to commit crimes. A bit of a warning also from Luis Moreno Ocampo.
Well, absolutely, and certainly there is a feeling that the more the pressure is put on Tripoli, the more he will feel extremely under pressure to reach about an outcome. People here say that this Chavez initiative to sort of try to have an intermediate is something that is actually to save Gaddafi, but not really. The opposition here is not interested in that. They only want him to leave and actually to be handed over to the opposition so he could stand trial for all these crimes and these allegations against him and his regime. But I still think that people do underline that unless the international community takes the bold action really of giving a green light for no-fly zones and for pinpointed airstrikes, then people will still feel that there's no safety, and they still feel that the government at any time could strike back.
And indeed, on that point about the airstrikes, we understand that there have been further Libyan Air Force airstrikes in the east. What more can you tell us about those?
Well, we did receive information that there were airstrikes in and around the area of Breda. That's the oil-rich city, about 200 kilometers away from here. Now, the situation there has been very, very fluid for the past 2 days, to say the least. It changes really by the hour, with news of the opposition taking over and then pro-Gaddafi advancing. At this stage, as we understand it, it is the opposition that's in charge inside the city, and they have managed to sort of have a sort of buffer zone around the city, pushing a bit further the Gaddafi forces, but they're still there and there's still clashes going on sporadically from what we understand at this stage.
OK, Hoda, thank you very much indeed. Hoda Abdelhamid live in Benghazi. Well, as we were mentioning there, there's been a fierce battle for the oil town of Brega. Tony Bertley reports.
It was a call to arms that was answered by thousands. From the towns and the desert, opposition fighters gathered in AlJazeera to repel an attack by forces loyal to Gaddafi. Their weapons ranged from the powerful tanks and anti-aircraft batteries to those more at home in a museum. There was confusion and disorganization. Shells were fired out. Complaints returned as residents ahead explained they were coming under fire from their own side. What about the capability? I mean, you've got a lot of men here and you've got a lot of weapons. Can the men use the weapons?
God willing, they will learn to use the weapons effectively.
The conviction of the volunteers has to be admired. The capability is open to question. Gaddafi's forces were said to number around 300 men. They attacked the strategically important town of Brega at first light, and witnesses said they began firing indiscriminately.
This is in the morning. Many people come in mafia for Gaddafi. He killed many people in the morning.
Heavy weapons were sent forward and hundreds of trucks and cars stacked with ammo and guns taken from captured army stockpiles. Casualties came back. Many hurt, he told us, many dead.
This doesn't seem to have been a full-fledged assault, more like a probing attack, but it shows that Gaddafi forces are strong, they can strike at will, and that the Libyan leader shows no signs of giving up. Quite the contrary, he's hitting back.
10 kilometers from Brega and more forces congregated. No one seemed to know exactly what was happening. Then a Libyan Air Force bomber circled overhead. Its first bombing run hit close to the centre of the fighting near Brega University. The second hit our position. Landing 70 metres away. Miraculously, no one was hurt. Then Gaddafi's fighters fled.
We suddenly saw some Toyota cars with anti-aircraft batteries. They started firing mortar rounds. The shells fell near us.
They left behind spent mortar, shell and machine gun casings and 10 dead civilians. 21 people were wounded, including a 7-year-old boy who survived a bullet lodged in his nose. These people who were killed, were they fighters or were they ordinary people?
Ordinary people. Ordinary people. He is going when Gaddafi's people. He is coming to university.
2 of the bodies were said to be of Gaddafi fighters. It was claimed one carried ID showing he was from Niger in Africa, but it's hard to verify. Despite the howls of bravado, this brazen attack has provoked both fear and anger and reminds everyone of the violent threats of Gaddafi. On Wednesday, we witnessed why the opposition is desperate for a no-fly zone and why it may not have the military capability to liberate all of Libya by force just yet. But this conflict seems far from over, and the question is how many more Libyans are going to die before it is. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, Brega, Eastern Libya.
Well, getting foreign nationals out of Libya is still a massive logistical problem. There have already been major air, sea and land operations, but thousands remain trapped. China has pulled out almost 36,000 of its people, and that mass evacuation is one of the biggest operations of its kind ever carried out by the Chinese government. The UN Refugee Agency say thousands are still flooding to the border crossings, and accurate numbers of those still trapped are almost impossible to know, but it's thought that there are still tens of thousands of African migrants. Well, Filipinos and other nationalities who haven't yet been able to escape are still trapped, and concern is now rising for Bangladeshi nationals inside the country. Up to 50,000 could still be trapped there, and the Bangladeshi Foreign Ministry says it has no plan yet to evacuate them. Well, let's hear now from Sibella Wilkes, who works for the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, in Geneva. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So where do you assess the biggest problem area to be on this issue?
Well, we're in touch with literally hundreds of refugees who say they're feeling absolutely trapped in Libya. They say that they're feeling hunted, they're feeling targeted. So we've registered 8,000 refugees, another 3,000 asylum seekers. But from what the refugees have been telling us, they're saying that all Africans from sub-Saharan Africa are very much at risk at the moment who are in Libya.
And this is because they're deemed to, by some people, to have been mercenaries or judged wrongly to be mercenaries. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, this is what they're telling us, that there's huge suspicion that they're involved